Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to day 2, another edition of albums that turned 50 years old in 2021. A big welcome from snowy New York. Got about 2.5 feet of snow dumped over the last day and a half, and it's still coming down. Never ending, right? So anyway, day 2. So again, this series, which is going to run throughout the month of February, is going to take a look at my 28 favorite albums that were released in 1971 that all turned 50 this year. I picked 28 favorites. Each day I'm also going to give you an honorable mention, which is an album from the larger pool of albums that I was looking at and considering. The honorable mention is an album that didn't quite make the cut of 28, but I love it a lot, right? So today we're going to take a look at an album. This should be kind of a no-brainer for anybody who is putting together their own personal list for this series here. Released November 8th, 1971 on Atlantic Records. Produced by none other than the guitarist and songwriter of the band, Mr. Jimmy Page. Of course, we're talking about Led Zeppelin. Their fourth album, Led Zeppelin 4, Led Zeppelin Zoso, the unnamed album, the album with the guy with the sticks, whatever you want to call it. This is an absolute no-brainer for this show, for this series. I would have a hard time imagining anybody not picking this in their list of 28 favorites from 1971. Probably one of the most beloved albums of all time. It's been rated by many, many magazines and programs as one of the greatest rock albums of all time. It is an absolute monster of a seller, or has been a monster of a seller in the United States alone. Has sold over 23 million copies. You add up the entire universe, and we're talking probably 30 million copies or whatever. One of the biggest selling albums of all time, and for a reason. I mean, there's some absolute jaw-dropping classics on here, whether this is an album that comprises a lot of songs for you personally that you've probably heard way too many times in your life, because, let's be frank, they played most of this album on the radio since day one, FM rock radio, ad nauseum, and they still play to this day. Stairway to Heaven, Rock and Roll, and Black Dog are still, you can hear them all the time, any day. Turn on any radio station, any streaming service, any satellite service that plays rock music. You're going to hear one of those at least a couple times a day. But then you got some great deep tracks on here, right? You got the Battle of Evermore, you got Misty Mountain Hop, you got Four Sticks, Going to California, and of course the epic closer, When the Levee Breaks. A very strong album, a legendary album that contains a little bit of everything that Zeppelin did so well. The thunderous hard rock, the bluesier fare, the kind of mystical folk, right? Good time rock and roll, a boogie, a little bit of everything on here. A great album, classic album for a reason, and you also can't not be astonished by the artwork on this album. So mysterious, so Led Zeppelin, right? So that's my pick for day 2. As for my honorable mention, so this is the third release from this particular band, and I like this album a lot. I think for me, it doesn't quite match up to their first 2 albums. And like the first 2 albums, this is also a double album. I mean, what band released fresh out of the gate 3 studio albums, all double albums, right? That doesn't happen. But of course, don't tell that to Chicago. Whoops, with their third album. All right, often called Chicago 3. Kind of like their second album, Chicago 2, or just called Chicago, right? Because the first album is called Chicago Transit Authority. They decided to shorten their name to Chicago for the first official Chicago album as Chicago. But many fans call that album Chicago 2 and this Chicago 3. Lots of kind of extended suites here, which they kind of did a bit on the second album. But a lot of really good songs on here as well. You've got the Travel Suite, you've got An Hour in the Shower, all right, and Elegy, which all make up the second, third, and fourth sides of the vinyls. On the first side, you've got the separate songs. You got Sing a Mean Tune, Kid, Loneliness is Just a Word, What Else Can I Say, and I Don't Want Your Money, the hard rock and I Don't Want Your Money. The rest is all this great kind of adventurous, jazzy, proggy, rocky, soulful, lots of horns and great guitar from Terry Kath. Got 3 different vocalists, Peter Cetera, Robert Lamb, and of course Terry Kath. Just a really, really cool album. Didn't quite make my cut of the top 28 of the year, but I do love this album quite a bit. Just goes to show you how strong a year 1971 was. So many great releases. I mean, I had my overall list was probably about 100 at least. And then I had to whittle it down to my 28 favorites, and then I had to do my 28 honorable mentions. Then I had all these other albums that didn't even quite make that cut that I felt really bad about, but you can only do so much. So there we have it. So my pick of the day for day 2, Led Zeppelin 4. My honorable mention, Chicago 3. So we've had a couple people who have asked, it's like, well, Pete, now that you're doing this, why don't you also do some shows that where you celebrate albums that are 40 years old this year, that are 10 years old this year, that are 20 years old this year? Guys, I just don't have the time. I'd be doing this all day long. I have a day job, and I have lots of other show ideas to do. So for me, 50 is pretty damn special. 1971 is pretty damn special. So, we may do every year going forward at the beginning of the year, we may do albums that are 50 years old. So next year we'll be doing 1972, and we'll kind of go forward with that. But, to me, 10 years, 20 years, not quite as special. 50 years, that's a big number. That's a big number. So stay tuned for tomorrow, where we'll do day 3. I've got another pick and another honorable mention for you. We'll be doing this each and every day till the end of February. 28 days, 50 albums that turn 50 years. 28 albums that turn 50 years old this year in 2021. So stay tuned. Remember, this is a everybody contributes here. So in the comments below, I want everybody else to give another pick. And some of you yesterday were picking like 3, 5, and 10 albums. Let's try and keep it to the focus of the show, kind of like what I'm doing. I'm picking one and an honorable mention. You guys pick one and an honorable mention. Okay. And remember, the honorable mentions are ones that don't quite make the cut of the top 28, because we're going to pick one each and every day. So in a sense, this whole month, we're going to do our 28 favorite releases that turned 50 years old this year, that were released in 1971. The honorable mentions are the albums we really dig a lot, but they're not quite that top 28. All right. So one selection, one honorable mention. Tomorrow we'll do the same, and so on and so forth. So this is on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. I've got a big surprise for you guys tonight. I'm not even going to announce it, because I've learned that sometimes things happen at the last minute. So if all goes according to plan, I've got a really special interview for you guys tonight. I'm really looking forward to talking to this gentleman. So hopefully that will happen, and we'll have that for you on the channel. What else we got going on? Tomorrow, Wednesday night, we've got Steve Keeler's coming on the show. We're going to rank the catalog, the studio albums of San Francisco Bay Area thrash titans Testament. That's coming up tomorrow. Thursday night, we've got another edition of The Monsters Den with Rich Catino and Chris Allo. We're going to do Animals Attack, some really classic films where the animals kind of go berserk and attack the humans, right? So that's coming up on Thursday. Also Thursday night, I will be appearing once again on Steve Keeler's Rock Fantasy Files channel for a discussion all about Led Zeppelin. So if you're a big fan of Zeppelin, and obviously you see I am, Steve has asked me to join him over on Rock Fantasy Files for an hour and a half discussion on Led Zeppelin. So that's coming up Thursday night over on the Rock Fantasy channel. So stay tuned for that. And if you didn't catch last night's Hudson Valley Square show, all about physical media versus streaming versus downloads, that whole thing, collecting music, listening to music, how you buy music. That was a very cool discussion last night. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check that out here on the channel, and all sorts of other stuff coming up. So stay tuned for that and a lot more. I am Pete Pardo. See you real soon. Bye-bye.